Right on. So what we're going to
Awesome.
do first is we're going to go over what we have for the learning agenda, which is how to evaluate. And after we go through that, we'll do a little bit of Q&A, and then we can look at your deal together. Does that sound good, Jasmine?
Oh my God, that sounds great. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Thank
Oh,
you,
you
thank you,
bet.
thank you. All right, is it okay to mute my phone now?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, and hello to everyone else in the chat as well, by the way.
Looks like we have a fairly small group today, just 3 of y'all, Rob, Mike, and Jasmine. So I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. And before I do, actually, I'm going to drop into the chat how you can get my my deal analyzer. This is a multifamily deal analyzer so that you can use for your deals. So feel free to navigate there. You can use it to, this is what I'll be referring to today. And we'll be taking a look at Jasmine's deal, and we'll be using this tool to analyze it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yes, it looks good.
All right, cool. So I've changed up this analyzer tool a little bit. I made room for, on the right-hand side, having all of the steps, the instructions, as well as note-taking, so that as you're pursuing a property, you can type your notes for that property right into this analyzer and keep it for your own safekeeping. It might be things that you've noted when you're on the phone with the seller or the broker and you want to jot it down, or to do homeworks that you want to stick in here to accomplish at another point in time, your task list. So that's what the white spaces are in each section. And I labeled each section, like this is the asset and market overview, this is income and expense, this is rehab cost and evaluation of pricing, and then funding, and then finally the entry fee, cash flow, and ROI. So it is made to progress in your data collection and your analysis of the deal as you move down the analyzer tool. So to start off with, anytime you're analyzing any deal, you need to know your market, especially when you're dealing with multifamily. Market is very important. You have to know the neighborhood and the general market. Like if you, let's say you're doing Winston-Salem, North Carolina, any city that you're in, what are things trading at for that market? What's the general cap rate for that market? So what we're going to focus on today is the pricing, the evaluation element of this. So evaluation, is basically how much is it worth? And there are several methods. You're going to talk about 4 methods. 2 are back of napkin methods, and 2 are ones that are more professional methods that are used to evaluate a property. The back of napkin methods are the 1% rule and the 50% rule, which a lot of people have heard of the 1% rule because it's fairly common whether you're dealing with multifamily or single family, whereas the 50% rule is more towards the multifamily. So what it does is it's just a quick way to look at your property and say, will this thing cash flow? Does it make sense to move forward with? So the 1% rule is the absolute quickest, easiest, and dirtiest way of doing it. And what it does, what it says is you take 1 month of rent, multiply it by 100, and that's the property value. It's like super easy and it's not very accurate, but it at least gives you a ballpark. So some people will use the 1% rule, and remember, every market is different. So when you're in, let's say, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, it's a different market than Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's a different market than San Francisco. And it's a different market than Memphis, Tennessee. So you have to know your market. So this 1% rule is like a general overall. But in some areas, people have a 1.5% rule, which is basically the same thing, except, basically you take your evaluation and you take 1.5% of it, and that's what a 1 month's rental income should be. Or if it's a 1% rule, you take your evaluation and you take 1% of it, and that's what your rental income should be. So to go reverse, you just divide by that percent instead of multiplying by it. So if your rental income, which is the GRI, gross rental income, is at 703,920, you divide by 1% or divide by 1.5%, or in some places divide by 2%. Rochester, New York, I think is closer to 2%. And then that helps you to see what the valuation is. Because some markets are really strong on rent income and some are more stronger on the actual appreciation side. But you got to know your market and see what your market is doing. So this shows the 1% rule. You can always tweak the formulas in here to match your market if 1.5 or 2 or some other number matches your market. But this right here is basically taking this, which is an annual gross rental income, dividing it by 12, because we're trying to get the monthly, and then taking that and dividing it by 1%, which is the same thing as multiplying it by 100. And then the last thing we do to see the valuation is subtract out any immediate repairs that are needed. So if you look at this formula, it says minus B26. So if you go to B26, right here, you see rehab cost, 1.2 million. So that's where your actual evaluation is you take the 1% rule says you take 1 month's rent, divide it by 1%, and subtract out immediate rehab costs. That's how much it's worth. So that rule tells you that this property is currently worth 4.6 million. Does that make sense? Is there any questions on this 1% rule? And do you understand the concept of a 1.5 or a 2% rule? It's all basically the same thing, just a different market. Any questions before we move on? All right, I'm going to presume that's a none. Okay, Robert says none. Very well. So now we're going to go to the next way of a back napkin way of evaluating it, and it's a little bit more accurate, and that's the 50% rule. The 50% rule does require you to know one more piece of information, which you really ought to know anyway. And it's kind of like the 1% rule. You got to know your market. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 1.5, maybe it's 2, which is very rough. This one is a little bit more dialed in, and it requires you to know the cap rate for your market. So what is cap rate? Cap rate is basically, what it means is the NOI divided by your evaluation gives you the cap rate. So if your evaluation is, in this case, we'll say it's, let's just make numbers easy. Let's say that the GRI, which is, we'll call it 100,000, and the place is worth 500,000, that makes the cap rate 1/5, right? Which would be 20%. Well, there is no such thing as a 20% cap rate, but that gives you the idea of how a cap rate works. If the GRI is 100,000 and the it sells for, let's say, 2 million. So then you would take, let me just pull up my handy dandy calc. 100,000 divided by 2 million. That gives you a 5%. That means that would be a 5% cap rate. That's what it's sold at. But that's not how you want to look at cap. Even though that's the definition is NOI divided by the value of the place. We want to find the value. We don't know the value. So you want to look at it as in what are these type of properties trading for in your market. So let's say your market is Memphis. If you're trying to find a multifamily in Memphis, what is a similar property trading for in your market? Is it trading at a 5% cap, 6% cap, 6.5, 7, 7.5? If you know that number, the cap rate, then you can figure out the evaluation. So the evaluation is, here's the NOI over cap. It says eval NOI over cap. That tells you right there. You take the NOI, which is down here, divide it by the cap rate. So how do you get the NOI? The NOI is net operating expense. So you have to take your GRI, subtract out your vacancies, add in any other income, subtract out your operating expense, and then you get to your NOI. So we'll take that step by step here. This is where this all comes in to develop the NOI. You take your gross rental income times your occupancy percent, 83% in this case, and then you add in your other income, potential income for that property. It might be laundry income, it might be a vending machine, it could be RUBS, which is basically a utility payback system. And you take all those incomes and you add it back in, and you end up with an EGI. EGI is effective gross income. So it subtracts out vacancies and adds in other incomes to give you your effective, in other words, your real income. Gross rental income is not your real income. It does not include vacancies. It doesn't take that into account. It doesn't take into account other incomes that your property might have, auxiliary incomes. So this is your real income, EGI. And then you take that income and you have to subtract out your operating expenses. So here's all the operating expenses. They all add up to this number right here, OPEX. So that's how you get to your NOI is you take your EGI, which is your real income, subtract out your operating expenses, and that leaves you with your NOI. So the evaluation of NOI over cap, which is the real professional way of doing it, you have to find the NOI, and then you have to know your market cap rate. What's it trading at? Well, what the cap rate is trading at is going to depend on several factors, even within a specific market. The main thing it's going to depend on is your asset class. Is it a class A, a class B, a class C? So the class A is the higher end, maybe it has a lot of amenities, a pool, a spa, things like that. It's got granite countertops, everything is fancy. That's your class A. And it's going to be in a nicer neighborhood. A class A is going to be in like your $1 million home neighborhood. Whereas class B is your middle income property. And a class C is like a low income property. Class D, you just want to stay away from. It's a bad. But every time you go down in a class, your cap rate goes up. So if you're dealing with a class A, I'll show you here. If I switch this from a class C to a class A, it recalculates the cap rate to a 4. If I change this to a class B, it recalculates to a 6. Let's say it's in between a B and a C, it recalculates to a 7. This formula gives you like a national average, but based on your market, you might need to tweak this number. So you got to know your market. It's extremely important. If you know that what things are trading at, is it trading at a cap 6, a cap 7, a cap 8, then that's the number you use for your cap evaluation. So if you take the NOI divided by cap, and again, you have to subtract out the immediate repair costs, then you come up with your professional way of evaluating it. But as you see right here, in this case, it requires so much repair and its cash flow is so low currently because of vacancies, because of high, low income and high expenses, that evaluation would actually come out negative. And you don't really, that's not really true. You're never going to pay, no one's going to pay you to take their property away from them. So that evaluation doesn't work, but that's the way you typically would want to evaluate if you have your data is NOI over cap. So the evaluation 50% rule, it basically streamlines that down so that it's not so complicated. The evaluation or the 50% rule basically says, I don't want to bother with all of my potential vacancies and other incomes and operating expenses. I'm just going to take this gross rental income and cut it in half, 50% of that. And that 50% is going to be my NOI. So it basically says at the end, instead of 703, my 50% NOI is going to be 352. See, 704 to 352. So that's the NOI 50% rule. Now that we've established that back of napkin NOI, now we can divide that by the cap instead of going through that whole big process. And the 50% rule comes to an evaluation of 3.8 million. All right, I'm sure we got some questions. That was a big mouthful. Let's see here. Isaac, glad you're here. If possible, may one from within share this template. Yeah, I'll post that again. There is the link to the template. So feel free to head on over there. John, yeah. Feel free to jump on in. Thank you, Isaac. Appreciate that. All right, cool. Now, any questions? We just went through a lot of stuff super fast. And the point behind my NOI over cap was basically to show you how the 50% rule saves you a lot of time and headache, because now you don't have to worry about all that stuff and you can jump straight to just knowing the GRI and the cap rate, and you can come up with a much, much closer evaluation if you dial in that cap rate. So any questions on that, on the 50% rule evaluation? No questions? All right, so we'll keep on rolling. So the third way, which we've kind of already talked about, is the NOI over cap. And that's the way you would really want to evaluate it once you're digging into the details. You'll need to ask your seller or the agent, the broker you're working with, for all the paperwork, the OM, the P&L, the rent roll, the T12, and any other paperwork they have that will help you to get all the details you need. The P&L are going to have your operating expenses that you see right here. So you need to go through and fill this in line by line. Sometimes you'll have to take 2 or 3 lines in a P&L and add them up into one line because of the way they broke it out, or vice versa. They might have one line that actually is for 2 or 3 lines here. So you just leave a couple of them empty if that was the case and put the whole amount over here. Whatever it takes to get all their numbers into this little list for operating expenses. The only thing you don't include when you're adding all that up is the CapEx. CapEx are your major things like re-roofing it, or fixing the replacing the HVAC, or a major major issue, a fire damage or something. Those sort of issues you do not include in OpEx. So CapEx is not included. CapEx is capital expenses, OpEx, operating expenses. Those are not operating expenses. So the operating expenses, once you get them all in here and you have your vacancy rate, the vacancy rate or occupancy rate, you're just looking at it from different angles. If occupancy rate is 83%, vacancy is 17, right? It adds up to 100. So they might tell you vacancy rate, they might tell you occupancy rate, but their rent roll should tell you what that is. So if you don't have a rent roll, you got to kind of deduct it with your conversation with them. And I'll tell you, if you're dealing with Class A properties, you really ought to have all of these paperwork, the OM, the P&L, the rent roll, and the T12, plus a bunch of other papers as well. They're going to have, a number of papers to help you out. But the rent roll, the rent roll tells you the gross rental income. It's going to tell you what each place is renting for. It's not going to tell you if they're actually rented year round. It's going to tell you if, maybe it'll tell you if it's rented now or not, but it's not going to give you a historical data on that, so you can develop your occupancy rate. But the T12, which is a 12-month trailing, should tell you that. If it's even better if you can get a T24 or a T36 or 3 years of T12. So that way you can develop a solid occupancy rate or vacancy rate. And they'll probably tell you in the memorandum or in their profit or loss, or somewhere they'll tell you what the occupancy rate is, but go through their numbers and make sure, because they don't always tell you the truth. So once you get that all added up, you get the all this data right here, all this data right over here, then you'll be able to do the NOI over cap. Some fail proofs here. This red flag here tells you if the OpEx expenses is out of expectation. So if it's below 30% or above 70%, it's out of expectation. Now that means that of all of your gross rental income, 77% of it is going away in operating expenses. That's higher than normal. It means that there's something wrong there. Well, it might be something wrong simply because of bad management. If the occupancy rate is low, you're going to automatically see a higher percent for OpEx. If the occupancy is high and is very well managed, you got a larger unit, which allows you to keep a low management fee, or if it's self-managed, you'll see this number drop lower. But if it drops below 30%, there's definitely something wrong. So you want to make sure that all your numbers are in here. So if your numbers are not all in here, it's going to inflate the value of the place, because your OpEx is going to be lower, which means your NOI is going to be higher. So if you're doing an NOI over cap, that means your evaluation is going to be higher, right? So keep an eye on that, and always remember, nobody tells you the truth. Okay, if they're selling the place, they're not telling you the truth. They're not telling you all the details. You can bank on it. You want to believe them, and you can, believe them up front, but you got to do your homework, because the end result is, when you're dealing with multifamily, you got millions of dollars on the line usually, and you need to make sure to dot your I's and cross your T's, and that your evaluation is correct. So if this data is wrong, your evaluation is going to be wrong. If this data is wrong, your evaluation is going to be wrong. So the NOI over cap has to be with accurate figures, and the same thing with your cap rate. So those are the first three that you can use to find your valuation. And the NOI over cap, as you see here, is a negative number. So if you're dealing with something that's out of spec and it gives you a red flag, or you have, a negative NOI over cap because your NOI is so tiny, then and maybe your rehab is so large, like in this case, you can't use NOI over cap. You have to use some other methods to figure it out. And one of them is the 50% rule. The other one that you can use is your price, your price per unit. Okay, so in order to get a really good cap rate and a really good price per unit comp, you really need to have a handful of realtors, brokers in your pocket that you can talk to them about. So when you're pursuing properties, you're typically going to look at both online and offline, on market and off market. And you want to have some realtors that you can have scouting for you. And your best deals are not going to be ones that are listed. It's going to be ones that when they pop up, the realtor calls you. And then you talk to the realtor and you get the resources you need to see if that deal is going to be a deal or not. But you need to have some realtors as part of your team. So those realtors can tell you what the cap rate is so that you are using the right cap rate for your market. You can do research on your own, but you're going to have incomplete data. It's not going to be that accurate. Privy, for example, I have this set up right now to show me the multifamily sold properties in Winston-Salem. I have it filtered to only show me deals that are 10 units or higher, because a 4-unit place is going to be totally different than a 10-unit place, and that's going to be different than a 100-unit place, right? So if I'm looking at this as a 48-unit that sold for 5.1 mil, this is a 48-unit that sold for 2.2 mil, less than half, right? Big difference. Well, what's the difference? Maybe the difference is simply the condition of the property. If I look at the asset class, they look fairly similar. This one actually looks, from this one photo, it doesn't look near as good as this one, but that's not enough information to tell. If I look at the neighborhood, I can kind of get a feel. Maybe this is a lower class neighborhood, which is going to bring the cap rate up, and that's going to devaluate the property. So you got to know these details about the area. You can use Privy to a certain degree. Crexi also you can use to a certain degree, but you really should depend on realtors, brokers, people with, not just any realtors or brokers. I'm talking about commercial, that work with multifamily, commercial brokers that know the multifamily market. They can tell you what a Class A is trading for in the area, what a Class B is trading for, what a Class C is trading for. And once you get those cap rates, you can do the right evaluation off of those cap rates. Also the comping, there's 2 ways to evaluate an income producing family property. One is from the income itself, which is the NOI over cap evaluation, but the other is what are other similar properties actually selling for in the comps. So when you're running comps for multifamily, unlike for a single family, it's not, a single family is just 1 unit, right? So you look at the value of the house. It's going for 300,000 after repair value. But in this case, we're looking at per unit. So if it's and this is like a 116 unit place, right, that we're looking at right now. So if the seller has it listed for 4.5 million, that means he wants 39,000 per unit. Whereas the market comps, if you talk to realtors, they might be telling you that in the area, it's trading for 45,000 per unit. That's what the properties are running for, is 45,000. And then that will give you the value of the entire place, minus the repair costs, which I see I didn't put them in there, but I'm just going to do this right now. Minus the repair costs gives you the actual evaluation. And then over here, this is your offer price. So you can say based off of the evaluation of 50% rule says 3.8, 1% rule says 4.6, but I trust the 50% rule more. I don't trust this at all simply because there's something wrong up here. I mean, basically it's because of the fact that it's mismanaged. It's not a good property as it stands right now. So that evaluation doesn't work. So this one and this one, I trust the 3.8 more than the 4.6. And then over here, based off of the market comps, is telling me basically 4 million. So I say, okay, if I set this to 4 million, which is a little bit higher than the 50% rule, but it's in the ballpark. That seems like a reasonable. They want 4.5, but I think it's really worth about 4. That gives me a 34 per unit. And that kind of, that's how you evaluate. Those are the 4 methods that you evaluate. The super easy one is the 1% rule, which is not very accurate. The next level up, which you need to know the cap rate for your market, which you really ought to know anyway, is the 50% rule. And then the next level up is the NOI over cap. And that requires all of this data collection, which is what you'll want to do at some point in time. You'll have to do this data collection. And then the last one is the price per unit, the comping of the property. You get a similar asset class. What's it selling for in your market per unit, and you multiply it out and subtract out the expenses. All right. Now let's see about questions. Any questions? We've just gone through 4 different types, 4 different ways to evaluate property. We kind of looked at elements of the deal that's necessary to come up with those evaluations, but I'm open right now to Q&A.
So Ralph, I have a question.
Yeah.
Say, for example, there's a multifamily going on the auction and we want to determine a price, and the seller or agent says, put in an offer and we'll look at it. And if it is close to what we are looking for, we can take it off the auction. Can we use this
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
determine, right? Just the theory that you just went through. We can determine what's it worth as long as we have all the financials.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I would take it in that order, just mentally, if you've got a GRI, you can just very quickly look at this property and see what sort of 1% rule evaluation you might have. And then the next level up is the 50% rule. And the next level up is NOI over cap. If you have all your paperwork, just go straight for NOI over cap. That's going to be the most accurate, presuming their paperwork is correct, right? So half the time the paperwork will not be correct, especially on a class B or C. So you can count on missing paperwork, and that's where your evaluation, 50% rule really comes into value. But if you do that research, you talk to brokers in your area, come up with the price per unit, you can definitely evaluate that way. The price, if you don't have a broker yet, and you're kind of guessing the cap rate, you can use the formulas here, and you can use the either NOI over cap or 50% rule to come up with a good number. But if you can talk to a broker and get your price per unit, that's a good way to really fine tune your evaluation of the property.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions? Okay, what we're going to do now is, thank you, Alex. We're going to jump over to, I think it's Jasmine, right?
Yes, it's me.
All right, Jasmine. So I'm gonna make a copy of this. And the way you make a copy is you go to basically file, make a copy. And then you can name it to whatever you want. And I'm just gonna name this Jasmine. Okay. Jasmine, I hope I spell it right. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, dear.
All right, cool. You got a little bit of an echo thing going on there. I don't know if you have two devices or something in the house. Just so you know. Okay, so Jasmine, if we can fix that audio issue, maybe we can just keep you unmuted and you can walk me through some details on this property. Don't give me the address, but maybe the
Okay.
market. What city is this in?
Okay, are we getting any feedback, guys?
Sounds good now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is actually in New York,
Mhm.
which is crazy because I just moved back from there to Michigan, off of, well, you told me not to tell you the address, but it was off of East 92nd Street.
So this is New York City.
This is New York City, yes.
Wow.
Right, that's what I said. What in the world? Okay, all right. So
That's my
Um,
neighborhood.
is it? Okay, so that's crazy because I used to stay off of 106 and Second. So it looks as though this is between First and Second, which is also crazy because might I mention I had my baby at Metropolitan. So I'm like, okay, this must be the universe kind of like sending me like confirmation, like, okay, Jasmine, you can do it. Just getting like connected to the right people. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, guys. To be honest with you, I mean, I do, but like, I'm just kind of taking in the nuances. Like, there's no, so okay. I just want to tell you guys about my day, right? Okay, so I'm going through the chats. I'm going through all the Paces YouTube pages. I'm going YouTube crazy. I looked on my email and just so happened, I'm scrolling through and I get this email out of nowhere from Joseph. I can't pronounce his last name, Moskowitz, I'm assuming. And it just is a basic email that states the address. Hello, please see the attached OM for a great opportunity in Upper East Side. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I saw the asking price is 3.75. It's a multi-unit.
All right, hold on a second
Oh,
here.
sorry.
We're gonna walk through this together. So-
Okay, yes,
Seller price 3.5, you said?
yes, 3.5.
Okay, got it.
Class is 2B. I don't know what the 2 is.
All right, we'll call it a class B. I'm not sure what he means by 2B.
Yep, I didn't either.
All right.
We talked about vacancies. It states here, I wasn't sure about what this means. It says 9 out of 11 units are free market,
So you have a total of 11 units.
total of 11 units.
Uh-huh. And it said 9 out of 11 are free markets.
Yes,
Yeah.
So
I
two
don't-
units are already controlled.
right. That would make sense. And then it says 7 of which to be delivered vacant.
Okay, so this is a portfolio. This is this is this a single building or a bunch of different buildings?
This is a single building.
Okay. So
Mhm.
I'm going to switch this units per building 11 to 50 because it's 11 units, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
And you said how many are going to be delivered vacant?
7.
All right, see, so if I run the calc here, I'm just going to put in here equals for occupancy, you've got 4 occupied, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's only a 30%, 36% occupancy. Yeah. All right, so we'll get down there in a minute. How many, well, let me talk about the age of the complex. Do you know what year it's built?
Yeah, let me give you all of that. Give me 1 second.
The best way to do this, if you can, is to walk through this from top to bottom. Because if you're
Okay.
jumping around, then you're gonna forget what you did and what you didn't do, right? What you inputted.
Makes a ton of sense. Let me find that year. I just saw it. 1 second, guys.
You know what, I'm trying to just look it up. 'cause
All right. That's
I-
fine. So under notes here, I'm just gonna put age or find age. Right? So that you don't forget what you need to do there.
Okay, I found it, 1910.
What was that?
1910 is when it was built.
Okay. Before
1910.
1950. Yeah,
Yes, that's
welcome
what
to
I'm
New York
looking at
City,
here.
right?
It's New York, yeah.
All right, bedroom count per unit. You know, if they're mostly 1, 2, 3 bedrooms or averaging 1, 2, or 3?
Okay, so they have a few here. Let me see, there are,
It's a 10 by 11 box.
Yeah,
you know, which down in that area, yeah, most likely, unfortunately. Okay. There are, it looks as though there are two bedrooms. And the rest are 3 bedrooms.
all right, so I'm gonna click on 3+,
Okay,
because most of them are 3 bedroom. And we're just gonna make the pro forma as well being 3 bedroom. Pro forma means, you know, where you want it to land once you're done with the project, once you fix it up, once you get it stabilized. So neighborhood class, what would you say that that neighborhood is? The asset is a class B. Is that also a B class neighborhood or is it different?
yes, it is a B-class neighborhood.
All right. And what about its current condition? Is it in disrepair? Is it well maintained?
Okay, so I'm looking at these pics here and they look fairly decent. Is there any way I could like post this to you guys so that you all can see the pictures?
Do you have a link, like a URL or something you can post?
You know what? I believe I can do that. Copy. You guys are here. I'm going to. Chat. Okay, let's see if that goes.
You know, due to time, Jasmine, we're gonna run out of time in just about
Okay.
13 minutes.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah, so how
Okay.
about you just tell me your gut feeling? You know, you can always go back and adjust this, but what would you say the condition is?
We can leave it at a C.
C condition? All right, and then so a B condition, basically you want to raise your condition to match the neighborhood. So
Okay.
you know, and your asset. So if you're dealing with a class A asset and a class A neighborhood, but it's
Mhm.
currently a class B or C condition, you want to
Mhm.
raise it up to an A, right? But in this case, we're dealing with a B neighborhood, a B asset. So we want to raise it to a B. So a condition B, a C condition to a B condition. And then the tenant class, you know, if you have bad management and they're not running any sort of you know, what do you call it, like checking out the tenants before they move in,
Mhm.
then your tenant class is going to be lower, right? Because of the bad management. What do you think the tenant class is? You know, typically if you're in a B neighborhood and a B asset class with a B condition, you would expect a B class tenant, but we're
Yeah.
dealing with a C condition. So what do you think the class of tenant is?
Based upon the rents that are occupied, I would say a B.
Okay, cool. So really, the only thing here that is different than a B is your condition is a little bit lower. It needs some work, right? So you could probably go with a class B. If you had some of these, if you had another C in here, although they say it's a class B asset, I'd probably go with a BC or even a C. If you wanted to go with a BC because of the condition, that makes this cap rate 7%. But the fact that we're going to be subtracting out rehab costs, I'm just going to leave it as a B, and that trades it at a 6%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So now we've got the initial asset and market overview completed, and we're going to move on to the next section. So do you have a GRI, a gross rental income, from a rent roll?
Yes,
Or from your OM or something?
I believe so. The ones that are occupied, obviously, right? Legal rent.
Yeah, I mean, well, basically, the GRI basically accounts for all of the units, not just the ones that are occupied. If you only
Okay.
have the ones that are occupied, what we're going to do is we're just going to type it straight in here to the EGI. So if your
Okay.
only income is rent and you don't have anything else for income, you can just put that total under EGI.
All right, so we're looking at $59,167.35.
All right, and that's all your rents, not counting not including the vacant units. It's only including the occupied units, correct?
I believe these are including the vacancies.
So it's counting the rents that he would be getting, although he's not getting them.
Correct.
Okay, so in that case, you want it up here. So what was that number again? 59 what?
59,167.
167. So that means after 36% occupancy, he's only pulling in about 21,500 a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that look accurate according to your paperwork?
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. Now you have to go to the expenses, the OpEx expenses. And I don't know what his numbers are here. Maybe he has a total that we can plug in real quick.
Yes, we do. Expenses, 97,230.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if he's making 21,000 a year and he's spending 97,000 a year, that means he's losing $76,000 every year. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And so, this is where we get into the situation where you're going to have a definite negative on this property because the NOI itself is negative, right? So the rehab costs. So we have a condition is C. You want to bring it up to a B, right? Because that's where it really ought to be for its neighborhood. You have 11 units. They're 3 bedrooms each. So, if he didn't tell you how much it's going to cost to renovate, you just kind of have to guess. And what I'm going to do to evaluate is I'm going to say, let's do a little bit on the outside, 0 for amenities. We don't need amenities. Units to renovate is 11. And this really should be gray because it's, there you go. And reno per unit, it's 3 bedroom. It's not small. So I'm going to say 15,000 per unit. And total outside the building, we're going to call it 20,000. I don't know what it needs, but maybe it needs resurfacing the driveways, the parking lot, miscellaneous, landscaping, whatever it requires to get the outside looking like someone's put some time and attention into it so you can get the property filled. One thing you're going to have to figure out is why it's only 36% filled.
Right.
So, is it because of bad management? Is it because he's charging too much money? Is it because the place is just a mess? I don't know, but that's the homework that's got to be done because you really need to get it to 95%. And what's going to make it 95? Well, one thing is fixing it up. Another thing is replacing bad management and doing it right. But another thing might be adjusting rent to where it needs to be if it's too high. I don't know if it's too high or not, right? But
Right.
but the expenses as well, you know, if you're saying 97,000 for expenses, you know, that's a lot. If your GIRI is only 59, if he only expects to get 59,000 even after it's all occupied, then he's going to be losing money no matter what, right? So
Yeah.
something's wrong there. There's
The numbers does not sound right because I think she said 36% is when they deliver, right, Jasmine? Because 7 units are going to be empty when they deliver. Am I
Correct.
correct?
okay.
Yep,
So let's swap that around.
So right now it's fully occupied. Am I correct?
it is, okay, 1, 2, 3.
Because
Four,
if you
five.
get a 3-bedroom apartment in New York City, it's minimum of $3,500.
Yes, that makes sense.
Right.
That's paying-
So if you times that by 11, you got 38,500 coming in per month.
Mm,
So that times 12, you know,
Yeah, something's wrong with those numbers.
yeah, you get $462,000 a year.
Yeah,
yep,
'Cause in
Okay.
that neighborhood, at least minimum is $3,500 per. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they
unit.
say $4,500.
right, that's true.
yeah.
They have here actually for those 3 bedrooms at 3,000, and those this is these are the ones for the vacancies. The 3 bedroom that's occupied, I don't know why it's at 1,100.
That's
So-
rent control.
Rent control, right? Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Hmm.
Yeah, so I guess they won't allow them to raise their rent once you have an occupant in there for years. Is that how it works there?
No, New York City, those 2 apartments rent is controlled by the New York City Board of Rent Control. So you cannot go in and raise the rent until they say, okay, we're gonna raise 3% or 2%, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's why, you know, a lot of times they say stay out of New York.
Yeah,
Certain
New York,
areas they say.
absolutely,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yes. New York City buildings, a lot of buildings are rent control, so, you know.
so what I did here is I took the EGI and made that 59,167, which Lee was mentioning, that's probably the delivered number. I
Mhm.
divided it by 36% occupancy to get 167, which that's still probably quite low. But with those numbers as they stand, you know, it's still in the red. You still have higher expenses than what you're pulling in, even at
That's right.
100% occupied, right? So I'm gonna
Mhm.
call, I think the pro forma should be way higher than this. So let's just say it's a 3,000 times 12 times 11 units, 396. So, you know, I'm saying 3,000 because some of them might be 3,500, some of them
Right.
have rent
Yeah.
control,
Yeah,
right? So I don't know, but we'll call it 396. And we'll say that the actual OpEx, it's currently 97K. I don't know what can and can't be done because I don't have the breakdown right now. So we'll just
Right.
make it equal to what it currently is.
Okay,
And that makes if you leave it equal, now you're looking at NOI of 279 once you get the pro forma where it needs to be instead of the negative number it is now. So that makes your evaluation different as well. So over here, you can see the valuation based off of the rehab costs that we threw in there, which I don't know the accuracy of that. You know, you really need to do a walkthrough of every apartment, every unit to see what rehab is going to be required. and, you know, look at the roof, look at the foundation, look at the exterior, look at the common areas, and develop your rehab value,
Okay.
or at least get a ballpark before you get, you know, too far along in this path. You can get a professional in there to tell you a quote, but you know, kind of evaluate it to the best of your ability. And then over here, you get your evaluations based off of these ballpark numbers we threw in here, and the, you know, what we estimated for the incomes and expenses. We're looking at a valuation of about 1.1 million. And then after, the pro forma is 3.3 million. I don't know price per unit in New York City. I'm imagining it's high. I don't.
Very high.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, let's just call it $500,000 per unit. I don't know what it is.
3-bedroom, that's more than that. You
Mhm.
can probably
Yeah.
like 600-700.
All right, we'll call it 650. Okay, so if it's 650 per unit, then we're looking at about 7 million for market comp. So the evaluation said 3.3 million for the income rule. For the
Mhm.
market comp, it's saying 7 million. So if the market comp is 7 million, and you divide that out by your NOI, you know, that's a very low cap rate. So cap rate, if I take NOI divided by the market comp value, it's telling me it's, oops, let me change this to a percentage number. It's telling me it's a 4% cap. And it's New York City, so I don't really doubt it is a 4% cap.
Mhm.
You know, he might be, you know, selling it. I mean, right now I have in here, the cap rate is 6 because that's a national average, but I don't know New York City. I don't know Manhattan cap rate. Maybe a Manhattan cap rate is a 4%. So if I take this cap rate, you know, if you know your market and your market is New York City, and you talk to realtors and they say, yeah, the going cap rate for a B-class property here is 4%. You punch that in right here, and you also punch it in over here so that it tells you the right numbers for your market. You're
see.
overriding the formula, but that's okay because the formula is just telling you national averages. When you pull your data, your research, you type it in over the top to give you the real numbers. And now that you've changed that to a 4% cap, now you go down here and it adjusts your evaluation 50% rule to give you a different number. Right? So this number here, this is after you subtract out the rehab costs. You know, 185 is probably low. I don't know New York City. You might not be able to do it for 15K per apartment. Maybe it's 25K. And I don't know how bad the shape, whoops, sorry. How bad a shape.
New York, I just looked into it, New York City cap rate 3.8.
3.8, yeah. So your guess there of 650 per unit is, you know, not too far off. If I take that to, let's call it 680, that's probably going to give you closer to that 3.8. Yeah, see that?
Yeah, see? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to change this 4 to a 3.8 and take this to 3.8. It says 4, but that's just its resolution. There you go. So now that I've done that, it adjusts the evaluation again, right? So now the evaluation, and I can call this 690, that's probably getting closer to the 3.8. Oops, I always do it one digit too many. There we go. So the evaluation is saying for the market comp, 7.3 million, which, you know, I don't know New York. I don't know, you know, a 3-bedroom house is different than a 3-bedroom unit, right?
Right.
If you're dealing with apartments and you're talking about the sold comps of multifamily. So if 690 is accurate based off of the 3.8 cap rate, then you're looking at, you know, an evaluation of 7.3 based off of market comps, but minus your actual rehab cost. So, and then if you look at over here, your cap rule, this is telling you 1.8 million, which is after subtracting your rehab costs. Those numbers are way different. And, you know, a lot of this is kind of ballparked, and I don't know New York at all. But
3-bedroom apartment to renovate, I would say this being in 1910 was built, it's gonna cost you somewhere around $100,000 a unit.
wow. Yeah, that's a lot of money. So, you know, and probably that landscaping and hardscaping and CapEx is going to cost you more than that 20K. I'm going to call it 200K. And that's probably more realistic for the rehab cost, which, you know, it's going to make your evaluation super low. And that's not realistic. If it's trading at a 6.2 mil, they're not going to sell it to you for 841. Right.
Right, okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So, you know, that he's wanting 3.5 mil. And 3.5 mil is a fairly realistic number, probably. It's right there between the evaluation, the income evaluation and the market comp. But, you know, if he's offering 3.5, you can probably get him down lower. But just understand that this thing is probably not going to cash flow. So I'm going to put 3 million. Let's say you offered him 3 million. Oop, that's 30. I did it again, an extra digit. There we go. All right, so now we've dialed in an offer price of 3 million, which is only 273,000 per unit. So that's like way lower than the 690 that gives you that 3.8 cap rate. But anyway, let's just go with the 3 million offer price. At that point, now to figure out your cash flow, there's a few more things you have to stick in to see if it cash flows or not. Starting with your financing. How is the financing going to be? So let's pretend we're going to do a typical bank financing, no seller finance, nothing fancy. So we're going to do a 30% down payment, which is typically what banks will require. And we're going to do a 7% interest rate because that's where banks are at right now. And we're going to do a 30-year amortization. Maybe it's a 10-year balloon. Maybe there's a balloon on it, but regardless of a balloon or not, the payment is going to be what it is. So the balloon is going to not change the payment. It's going to change how quickly you got to get out of the deal. Make sense?
Yeah.
So if your loan payment is 20K, the next thing, and you have no funding too, now you got to figure out your investor funding. How are you going to fund this? You can fund it through an LP partnership, you know, like a syndication where somebody comes up with the money and there's GPs and LPs. It's a lot more complicated. Or for a lot of smaller units, you just do a simple route and you do, you know, private money partners or private money loan. So a PML is private money loan. And then if you're going to loan it at private money, you know, it's going to be 10% cost, maybe higher, maybe lower. With the interest rates up now, it's harder to get a low PML rate because they go up with the interest rates. So it might be 12% now, and you just have
12
to.
is more realistic.
What's that?
12 is more realistic.
Yeah. So then your PML payment is another 16,000. So that means your entire debt service is 20,000 plus the 16,000 times 12 months. That gives you a debt service of 432,000. So your DCR or DSCR is under 1. What that means is your debt service is higher than your income. So
That's not good.
yeah, it's not good. Even your pro forma income is way lower than your debt service. So what does that mean? Number one, you can't use private money. It's not an option for you for this property. So the only way you could do it is either private money a silent partner, a JV partner, that they bring the money and you do the work, or you do a syndication deal, which you have to go through a whole bunch of legal processes to accomplish.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but even then, it's if you use a partner as opposed to PML, you're only at 1.16 DSR, DSCR. What that means is you cannot get a loan for this property. If it's under 1.25, it's not really loanable because it's not a safe deal.
It's
What
risky.
this means,
Too risky.
yeah, you can't, basically there's no money in it. So even after pro forma, your debt service is 240, but you're only pulling in 279, right? It's a risky deal. So if this number is low, if it's if it turns red, you just forget the deal. If it's
Hard pass.
yeah, but if
Okay.
it's high, like I'm just gonna punch in here, instead of this, I'm gonna call it 400. Okay, that changes this to 1.66. So now that's a less risky deal because your debt service is significantly lower than what you're pulling in. Does that make sense? Okay, so now you've got to this point of seeing, is this even possible, right? You got to come up with the
Right.
money. This is the money part, the funding part. So if this deal was 400 NOI, then yeah, it could be possible. It's not, according to what we've seen, according to our quick calc of 97 OpEx and, our numbers we stuck in here for income, you're not going to get, even after pro forma, you're not going to get 400K of NOI. But
Right.
pretending that you did, and your debt service on that was 240, now it's a loanable deal, right? So this
Right.
is how you figure out if you can even get a loan on the thing. The
So
next thing,
anything, sorry, anything under 1.25 of DSCR is unloanable.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
There have been, I don't even know if you can now, but there have been ones that will loan it out at 1.2, but that's risky. And the market is getting more and more risk adverse, and you should be risk adverse as well. So, the higher this number, DSCR, the better.
Gotcha.
1.25 is minimum, but if you can get 1.4 and up, it's a lot better.
Okay.
Okay.
In another scenario, if we bring a LP partner with 50% or 40% of the amount you need, then renovate it, stabilize it after a year, then you refi. Can you go like that?
Yeah, you can pull in enough money to do that. But
Because the numbers show that it will. So if you refi it, you're gonna get, 70% of 6.2.
yeah, you're basically looking at it as a fix and flip, right? As a big multifamily fix and flip, and you pull
Or a
your,
DCR loan.
yeah, that too, yeah. So let's explore for a minute. I saw something in the chat that I hadn't covered yet. No payment to the seller for 2 to 5 years due to conditions. So let's explore for a minute your creative financing options, because I didn't explore that. I just did bank, right? So if you could do creative, it changes everything. So, let's say we're working with a seller finance. So now you can talk to them about perhaps no money down, or perhaps a super low interest rate, or perhaps, like somebody said in the chat, no payments to the seller for the first 2 to 5 years, right?
Yeah. Or what about a novation?
Yeah,
Mm.
which a novation, yeah, that's, a novation agreement is basically you fix it up before you buy it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So-
in the end, you're paying the seller.
And they might be open to that, if he's taking it to auction and obviously he's not cash flowing, he's in trouble. He may
Yeah.
be open to that. So it's not necessarily a dead deal, but just keep in mind, this play here, you're talking about New York City and super low cap rates. It's going to be hard to get a good cash flow out of a 3.8 cap rate. But it might be a good deal for, pulling in some appreciation, forced appreciation, and taking that money to the bank.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
the long-term
Yeah.
end of it, because there's so much going on and around that area. Like I just left and I was like, oh, okay. All right, this will be definitely a hot spot.
Yeah.
But it's just finding the right person to be that creative to,
Yeah.
close that deal. So my options would be, just for instances, a Novation. I heard you, Novation, or we could do, I noticed in the chat, no payment, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, basically the idea here is that you have to figure out how to make this thing, to float it while it's not cash flowing, or to make it cash flow, right? And this is with, I bumped this up with some numbers that, this is based off of that 3,000 per unit number. I don't know the rent control situation. I don't know if that's only for, maybe Lee can help out there, but if it's only for people that are in place, or if it's for the building, even if you get a new tenant in, I don't know how that works, but
It's only for those 2 units.
okay, that are currently occupied.
Exactly. It's
that are
not
currently at the
for
1,000
the
or
units,
whatever.
the other units. If they move out and new tenants came, they can't make it rent control. Unless it's specified that unit is rent control.
Okay, so, so
He's
Lee,
probably getting, the reason that is, he's probably getting, landlord probably getting some sort of tax incentive from the city. That's why they asked back to be rent control. Most of the apartments that they're putting in now in New York is 30% affordable housing.
oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So they get this huge amount of tax breaks.
That's right.
So city gives that, and in return, city asks, okay, you have 100 units. I need 30 units to be affordable housing.
Okay.
End of
So-
story.
So the rent control isn't like you can't raise your rents because they're grandfathered in. It's because of low income housing.
Yep. And it's
Okay.
all controlled by the New York City Board of Rent Control. They say, okay, you can raise the rent 2%. That's it.
Uh-huh. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
something you're gonna have to get, further information on, and the pro forma rent is what can you do and can't you do to see, where this thing is gonna land. And the
Okay.
idea is that the pro forma NOI, you want to get that up as high as you can, which means raising the income, lowering the expenses. And if you can do that and get a higher NOI, especially with a going cap rate of 3.8, that helps you if you're going to flip it, because now your evaluation goes super high, and it helps you if you're going to refi it. So if you can get this NOI up through these methods of income and expense, and then you divide it by 3.8%, now you're looking at a super high pro forma in the end, depending on how high you can get the NOI. So a little bit of investigation needs to be done in that area, and talk to
Okay.
them and see if they're open to working with you. If they're open to something creative, seller finance. I don't know if there's already a mortgage in place or not, or if it's, if subject to is going to be in the consideration, or, if he has a mortgage on it, subject to, or, a lot of times with multifamily, you do what's called a master lease, which is kind of similar.
Yeah.
Basically, it's, you have the lease from him, and then you lease it out yourself after that, or rent out the units. But the master lease is another way of accomplishing it. And the idea behind it is make sure that you don't end up in the red, or you at least pull in enough investor investor funds to cover the red until you can get it into the black. Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Isaac. Looking through a different lens is totally important, because what appeared to be a no deal could potentially become a deal if, and there's a lot of ifs there, if you
If we
can
get
raise
the
the NOI,
NOI,
yeah,
Mhm.
and if you can get some creative financing in place.
Which I did find that they have the NOI here at 216, but I'll do that after the after we get
Yeah.
off here and play with the numbers.
Yeah,
Mhm.
over here, you see the difference between bank. It
Oh,
lands
versus
at
seller finance.
Yeah, big
Mhm.
difference on the DSCR as well. 1.66 for bank and 2.18 for seller finance. And that's when I
Wow.
had overwritten this NOI with a bigger number, right? So
Makes
I don't
sense,
remember
yeah.
what it was, let's call it 250.
Mhm.
I overrode it, so it's gone now.
That's fine.
But you see the DSCR now is 1.36
1.36.
for seller finance. For bank, it's 1.04.
Yikes.
So you got to explore your options. And sometimes it might be what you call a hybrid, where you have seller finance, and like you have the bank in
And
place on
sub
one
too.
side and seller finance for the other side. But
Gotcha.
keep in mind the more you finance, the higher your debt service, the lower the DSCR, right? So you got to figure out what you're financing and then what rate it's going to be. So if this is a 5% rate seller finance
Mhm.
and the bank is at 7, maybe you can get him down to 0% finance, and that will help out. But the idea is get this debt service as low as possible so that you're cash flowing better, so that your DSCR is better. Make sense?
Yeah, makes
Cool.
complete sense.
All right, now we're way over time. Sorry, everyone. Thank you for sticking around, those that are. We're going to get into the entry fee, cash flow, and ROI pieces of it. The entry fee represents what your funding, your investor funding has to come up with, whether it be a silent money partner, PML, or a JV or an LP, I mean. So whatever type of investor funding you have, this is the money you got to come up with after your bank and creative financing are done. 1.6 million. And that's going to depend a lot on, let me move this back to none. And notice this changes, the entry fee changes. I'm going to change this back to seller finance. The entry fee changes. And the reason is because depending on your financing, it might tweak what is financed and what is not financed. So although banks, seller finance you might do for 5%, maybe 0%, it's all what you work out. Bank is going to be like 30% is going to be down payment. So they will require more down payment. However, the upside is a lot of times you can get a loan to cover your rehab work. So if your rehab work is 1.3 million, they might cover 70% of your purchase price and 70% of your rehab cost, right? So there's a little, if you have a high rehab, bank might actually come into a better scenario than seller finance or creative, right? Then there's also hard money for multifamily, which again, that's going to cover kind of like a bank. They might cover 1% of your rehab cost and 1% of your actual purchase price, right? So if depending on the rehab cost, creative might be better, or either conventional or hard money might be better. Make sense?
Mhm.
All right. So you got to gather all your entry fees. If they're in the arrears, you got to pay up on mortgage or pay up on taxes or whatever the arrears are. You put that right here, along with acquisition fees. So if a broker is bringing this to you and the broker fee is going to come out of your side, not the price tag, which on multifamily that happens. Typically in a single family home, residential, the broker fee comes out of the seller side. On multifamily, very frequently it comes out of the buyer side. So you got to know that, who's paying for that broker fee. And in addition, if the property is being moved by means of a wholesaler, whether that be you or somebody else, that wholesale fee is part of the acquisition fee. So you got to make sure to include it here. And then the closing costs, whatever it's going to take, holding costs. And to keep in mind with anytime you're doing a bank finance, they're going to require 6 months typically of your bank payment of your debt servicing to be set aside in a bank account specifically for that. So that
Wow.
if you're running into challenges paying the bills because it's not occupied, because you're renovating it, because people moved out, that will come out of the holding. So that holding is a bank security that you're not going to default, right? And then your marketing expense to get the thing filled after you renovate it. So you're looking at, in this case, 1.6 mil is your entry fee, and that's primarily because of your 1.3 mil rehab costs.
Rehab costs. Mhm.
Yeah. And then once you have the entry fee, now you can go after that money, which is through, it might be LP, like this I have marked as LP. It might be a private money partner, which is kind of the same as an LP. Not exactly, it's different legally, but when it comes to numbers, it's kind of similar. Then you divide up their share. How much do they get? How much do you get? Depreciation share, how much do they get? How much do you get? And then you come up with your cash on cash return, which you typically want to be better than 10%. If you're going for an appreciation play, it could be lower than 10%, but most buyers like it to be 10% or up. If you have people that are, they're really into the appreciation, they don't really care about the cash flow, it could be significantly lower than 10%. But our IRR is our return on investment. It's showing a negative, the IRR is basically how long you hold in the project and what's it going to do for you annualized over the course of the time that you held it. So if you hold it for 5 years, you're looking at a negative IRR. It's negative all the way through. So basically, that's because right now our NOI is so small that we're losing money. And the only way that we're actually going to, we have a pro forma evaluation of 6.5 million. Maybe it's worth more than that. I don't know, but the pro forma says 6.5. So this is calculating that into the equation, but you're losing money as you go. So that takes that into account. But I'm saying it's pro forma is only 250, but let's make that 500,000 to see how it changes the numbers. If I make it 500, okay, we're still negative. So let's see here, the cash flow. Pro forma cash flow should be positive. Debt to income is 2.8. Why in the world? So this accounts for the amount of money they have to come up with, and then the amount of money they'll get out of it in the end. So probably that you're going to have to give up a bigger share. So let's say they get that your money partner gets 90%, and your appreciation share, they also get 90%. Okay, something ain't right here. Interesting. Let me look this over and see why. This property is quite different than what I'm used to doing. So there's something in here that's, it seems to me that this should be positive at this point because of our high NOI. I'm just going to punch in 1 million. I overrode a bunch of formulas and I might have messed it up in the process. Yeah, it's not coming back. So it looks like it's something that I probably overwrote that messed it up. And that's why it's ending up with these numbers. Let me show you my template real quick. And over here on the template, based off of the numbers that are punched in, this property is its NOI is super low. Similar situation, it's under occupied, high expenses, and you end up with a negative NOI over cap, right? So your evaluation here, we're calling it 4 mil. And then based off of the financing of bank and seller finance, your DSCR is 1.9. And you end up with a 7.2% cash on cash return. Cash on cash is basically on year 2, after it's all, the project is done, it's stabilized, it's fully rented, or at least 95% rented. That's how much money they're making on the money they put in. They're making 7.2% on the money they contributed, which is a little bit low, right? The interest rates from the bank right now is like 7%. So they could do just as good taking their money into some form of a portfolio investment as opposed to into this investment. So 7.2 is not that great, but if they're going for appreciation, that's a different story. This is showing a 20% IRR, which that is, so this is really an appreciation play. So basically when they sell it or they refi it and they get their money back out, then they're making annualized 20% a year with this sort of investment. So it's not a high cash flow property. It is a high appreciation property. And they end up with a 2.4% return after 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
So
was thinking about Pace and I was thinking, what would Pace do when he talks about appreciation?
Right. Yeah. So, the appreciation on this, if you look at the evaluation down here, this tells you year by year what you're looking to see. Cash flow for your partner, cash flow for the GP, general partner, or for yourself, if you're just doing it yourself.
Wow.
And then cash on cash, return annualized. This is the evaluation per year. You see the number going up. So it's initial evaluation. In this case, we're calling it 4 million, but after year 5, we're at a 9 million evaluation.
Damn.
So that's where this comes in, is in the appreciation of the evaluation, so that you can either refi it out or you can sell it and get a nice big fat paycheck. So,
Refi them, keep all their money tax-free.
yeah, that's the nice thing about a refi is the money you're getting out is a loan, so you don't have to pay
Wow.
taxes on a loan.
Lee, you wouldn't want to.
And 5 years, you'll be charging like $6,000, $7,000 apartment on that place.
That's why I'm looking at it for, the long run here. And I'm like, it looks messy now, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Lee, you want to,
So
thank you for all
Jasmine,
your, yes.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through here and figure out why it's not calculating right. I'm going to
Okay.
probably have to go back and fix my formulas that I've been messing up by over typing, but I'm going to twist it backwards and see why. And then you can come and make a copy of this. All right.
Oh, would be great. Could I send you the, oh gosh, okay, there you are. Okay. Could I send you what I have on my end to
Yeah.
probably like follow up to?
Yeah. And
Okay, did I send this to the chat or the like to you personally?
just send it on Discord.
Discord, yes, got it. Okay.
I'm going to put this link in here, Jasmine, of this property.
I
I'll
sent
be
you a
happy
message too, Jasmine.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I'll be happy to help you out with this document and some details, but you really need somebody that knows New York.
Lee,
Yeah,
I don't know, what are your
I can be the
thoughts?
guy in boots on the ground.
Yes, please, that will be,
And
yes.
and I am a contractor and a builder as well.
There
Are
you
you?
go.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go.
Okay. I have a
And
little note. Yeah.
and a builder and a flipper.
Okay, well, I mean, listen, I am kind of the humble person. You could take like
whatever you need, and I'll take the crumbs of it. But it's just,
Yeah.
Lee, you and I will talk. 'Cause I
We'll
know we
we'll
have to
talk,
end the
and I
call.
have, if everything is okay,
Mhm.
I do have a private money guy who funds my deals, that fund this whole deal.
Wow.
One guy, I just have to pick up the phone and tell him the details, and he will like, okay, when do I need to send the money? I don't even
Whoa.
sign papers anymore.
Wow. Okay, Lee, I'm giving you my number right now through this.
Just shoot me a text. I put you my number.
Okay.
You have my number on the chat.
Oh, I sure do, don't I? Okay. I am sending.
Ralph, the link that you put in before, from last week, it's fixed, right? Because
Yeah.
we went through the same thing last week, I think,
Well,
when
yeah.
you were doing something.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely fixed from last week. The template itself should be fine.
Yeah,
The one that for Jasmine, I think I messed it up during this session. So I just put into the chat Jasmine's sheet. You might want to just start from scratch, Jasmine, as opposed
Yeah.
to this sheet here. Let me put in the one from the template again. All right, that way you can just go with the good one.
That makes sense. Okay.
And just start punching your data in from scratch. And if you need any help underwriting, I'm happy to help.
Oh, thank you, guys. You're amazing.
I might get you involved too, Ralph, because I got a couple deals that I'm trying to stop going into auction,
Yeah, man,
multifamilies. Yeah,
for certain. We can chat.
awesome.
All right, well, we're well over hour and a half, so thank you all for sticking with it. Hope
Thank
it was
you.
helpful.
Absolutely.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, well, enjoy the rest of your evening. I don't know what time zones y'all in. Thank you, Isaac, and everybody else who contributed. Lee, you were awesome. Jasmine, you too.
You
Nice
guys
work.
are great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you a billion times. I'm looking forward to working with you all, everyone who's on the chat actually, but thank you, Ralph, for just, man, right on time. Lee, I just sent you out a text. I think I sent my number in the group chat. So if anyone want to reach out to me, that's more than okay as well. And everyone, have a great night and much prosperity to everyone.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Good night, everyone.
And night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.